Welcome to Reddit Story. Subscribe and like it. I think it's not difficult for you. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we have a story of a man whose wife tried to fool him in the name of therapy sessions. But the OP caught them red-handed and did this. Here's the full story with 2 updates. I'm 37, and I caught my wife, Emily, 32. We were married in 2018. We met a few years before that through business because we are in the same industry. I loved her more than anything. The reason I married her was because I had major turmoil in my life, and she stuck with me. We had a small break before we got back together. When we started talking again, I found out my father was indicted in a cold case murder. He was going to jail. The terrible part is my father had custody of my nephew, Mike, who was 4 at the time. I was the only family member able to take him on because my brother was currently in jail. Through this, she said we would do this together. I knew I wanted to marry her right then. My wife was told she more than likely wasn't going to be able to have kids, but I wanted to marry her anyway because of how much I loved her. I always wanted to be a dad, but was willing to sacrifice that because of how much I loved her. During this terrible time, I wanted something solid. We were best friends and had made it through so much that I felt like we could tackle the world together. I asked her to marry me on a weekend, and then we found out she was miraculously pregnant the following week. We went from talking again to a family in no time. Looking back, I wanted to have a long engagement to make sure we worked through any issues from our break, but instead, we were thrown right in. We were married in 2018, and everything was great. I loved her very much, and our marriage wasn't perfect, but I was loyal to her, and she was my ride or die. Fast forward to 2021, we moved states because I had to take a new job after our business was derailed by COVID. This new job required me to travel a lot, and she wanted to be close to her family for help with our 3 kids. We had 2 beautiful girls on top of my nephew. Emily quit her last job and worked locally with family. She hated being home because her family was full of constant judgment. When help was needed from them, it was like pulling teeth. It honestly pulled us down and reminded her why she left the first time. Her old employer asked for her back, but this job was 4 hours away. Without discussing it too extensively, it required her to be gone during the week. She was going to work this into a remote position, but as she started the job, she began to like being away. She left me to take care of the kids. I loved them, but it was hard. I felt abandoned. I still traveled 2 days a week and had to rely on and deal with her family, not to mention all of the duties of taking care of 3 kids. When she came home on weekends, it was fight after fight. I wanted and needed help, but when she came home, she hardly wanted to hang out with us, and instead would go out with her brother and friends. All I wanted was help. The business we are in is primarily male. She started being distant, and we were hardly sexual anymore. Last summer, we moved to where she was working. Her time there changed her. She is a beautiful, tall blonde, and constantly got hit on by her male coworkers and customers. She had a coworker, Dave, 33, who I knew before from being in the same industry. I liked him. I never felt threatened by him because all dealings with him had been good. He put it out there that he was a moral man as far as I could tell. I did not feel threatened since he wasn't Emily's type. After we moved, I tried everything I could to make Emily happy, listening, being emotionally supportive, complimenting her, and handling household tasks to make an effort. But it was all to no avail. What I did was never good enough. We finally agreed that therapy was our best option to make things work. We agreed on individual therapy first. She found an online therapist, which I thought wasn't the best, but it was what she wanted. One day, she asked about my plans for later in the week. I told her I didn't have to travel and would be working from home. She asked if I could work at a coffee shop that day because she wanted space for her therapy session. I said sure. We had always shared our location due to safety. A few times in recent weeks, her location would randomly turn off. She said it was an issue with her phone. On the day of her session in the afternoon, she made sure my location was working and called me to confirm. I felt suspicious. I asked if everything was okay, and she said yes. I turned off my location, and 15 minutes before her session, she asked why mine wasn't working. I told her my phone must have the same issues as hers. She asked if I was still at the coffee shop, and I said yes. She told me I could come back in 2 hours. My spidey sense went off. I left the coffee shop and saw her location wasn't at the house. I drove back and parked down the street. 5 minutes later, I saw Dave and Emily both get out and walk into the house. It was obvious she wasn't going to therapy. I waited for 10 minutes, heart racing, imagining what I might find. I had to know. I walked in, and no one was in the living room. There was no reason for Dave to be in any other room. I made it to our bedroom and opened the door to find them both about to do the deed. He was fully naked on my bed, and she was almost there. I looked at her and yelled, "Is this a new type of therapy?" Both of them had utter shock on their faces. She ran after me, trying to say it wasn't what it looked like. I broke down. I didn't cry, but my body and mind took over. My world had turned upside down. Dave exited as quickly as he could while Emily made sure she was between us. I tried to leave, but Emily was physically blocking me. I would never physically hurt a woman, but a relentless version of her came out. All I wanted to do was leave. I used my defensive lineman skills to evade her without getting physical. Once I got to my car, she blocked me from leaving. In order to leave, I had to trick her into thinking I wanted to talk. I sprinted to the car and took off. I think she broke a nail trying to grab the door handle. As I was speeding away, flushed with anxiety, the image of Dave naked on my bed haunted me. After everything I had done to make her happy, how could she do this? While driving away, I probably should have pulled over at some point because I was hyperventilating and couldn't get my heart rate down. However, the first thing I thought of was my kids. I immediately drove to their school and picked them up. At this point, I was getting bombarded with calls and text messages from Emily. I decided to block her. My only concern was for my kids and ensuring they were okay. Under my supervision, I could make sure they were safe. I needed them more than her at that moment, and she could spend the weekend by herself, reflecting on what she had done. Once I got the kids, I drove 2 hours to a family member's house. This happened on a Friday, and I took the weekend to spend time with just me and the kids. During the drive, I started getting calls from Emily's mother, who acted as a mediator. The only thing I told her was that the kids were safe. I asked her not to share any details about our situation or where we were going. Emily's choice to break up the family didn't warrant her knowing anything else. Her mother agreed and told Emily the kids were fine. Emotionally, I felt dead inside, but the kids brought out some positivity in me. Over the weekend, we did various activities and had a great time together. They asked where their mom was, and I told them this was a weekend for Daddy to spend time with them. I didn't want to say anything spiteful about their mother, as I believed that kids eventually formed their own opinions. Later, I found out that Emily was worried I might harm the kids due to my emotional state, which shows how much she really didn't know me anymore. I would never do anything like that. I began to see some of the narrative Emily was putting out there to sway others' opinions. To give context, while I loved Emily deeply and tried to make her happy, she had narcissistic tendencies. If I was sick, she would be even more sick. If I had a problem, her problem had to be bigger. When we adopted my nephew, I believe it was partly a tactic to lock me down. At that point in my life, I was very successful, and I think she realized that someone else would want me. During our break, she seemed to understand this and saw it as an opportunity. I have insecurities from my upbringing, but people often tell me that I'm a good person who always tries to make things better. That's always who I try to be. I'm not perfect and have my share of issues, but I always try to improve things for everyone. My nephew became a problem for Emily after we adopted him. I think she harbored resentment because, in her mind, some of her life was stolen from her. Their relationship was rocky, and she constantly criticized him. I believe this has left him with some emotional issues. I always had to defend him for simply being a kid. He did have some issues that were valid, and we got him the appropriate care, but navigating the mental health system for children is always slow and challenging. It didn't matter, though. I was always caught in the middle. As for Dave, he's married with a few kids and works in the same industry. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. I can't stop thinking about how he presented himself as a moral person, only to find him naked in my bed. I do know that he blocked me on all social media, which leads me to believe he's doing damage control to ensure his wife doesn't find out. However, in those 10 minutes I sat in the car before walking in, I found a way to contact her if it comes to a worst-case scenario. The power to completely ruin someone is daunting, but if it's the right thing to do, I will. Ruining someone has its advantages and disadvantages, but letting him get away with it is also tough. For my own protection, I recorded the entire situation on my phone. I've watched the video multiple times, which probably isn't healthy, but I'd rather deal with the pain now than let it linger. I've unblocked Emily and had limited contact with her. I've allowed her to talk to the kids on the phone to let them know she misses them. I'm planning a face-to-face meeting with her to address everything. Many people advise me to go straight to a lawyer, and I think that's ultimately what will happen. But I need this one-on-one conversation for closure and to determine my path forward. Another common suggestion was to get a paternity test for the kids. I can say with certainty that they are mine. They look just like me, and the timelines match up. We even share a birthmark, and their hair color is undeniably from me. I don't believe Emily would have jeopardized our family that early on, but I might still do the test just to leave no stone unturned. Some close friends, who have given me great advice in the past, said I'm doing the right thing by not acting rashly with the video. I could ruin both Emily and Dave, but what would that do to my kids? I want to move forward with a plan that prioritizes them. I don't want to get back with her, but I need to figure out the best steps for our kids. People have called me a simp for not reacting emotionally, but I've always believed that the best revenge is methodical and well thought out. I finally had a sit down with Emily. Both she and Dave have been on the defensive, trying to protect themselves as much as possible. I have the upper hand and I know what I'm going to do. First off, I did an at-home paternity test, and both children are indeed mine. There was some doubt based on what people on Reddit were saying, but I got the truth. When I arrived at the house, the first thing Emily tried to do was give me a hug, but I denied her. She doesn't get to keep playing on my emotions anymore. I honestly felt nothing when she started crying. I wanted the upper hand in the conversation, so I let her go first. She started by apologizing and saying she can't get the image of my face out of her head when I walked in on her with Dave. She claimed that reflecting on everything made her realize what she had done, and how good I had been to her. She said that she and I hadn't been intimate lately, and she convinced Dave that it would be a one-time thing to see if she could be intimate with someone else. She wanted to make sure it wasn't just her emotional state that was causing the lack of intimacy between us. I didn't believe her for a second. Her actions spoke louder than her words. When she asked me what I was going to do with the video, I knew that's what she was really worried about. She even asked me not to implicate Dave at his job because he had a family. She claimed it was all her decision and that she convinced him to come over. This was complete nonsense. A moral man, as Dave claimed to be, would never have crossed that line. He was in that bed too, and I was furious. I realized once again how little of a priority I had been to her. With my kids in mind, I made it clear that I was going to take the necessary steps to protect myself and them. I told Emily that Dave needed to find another job. With our industry being small, he could easily find work elsewhere. If he didn't, I would send the video to his workplace and to his wife. His wife deserves to know. Emily said she couldn't ask him to leave his job, and I responded that it wasn't my problem. Their decision led to this, and there would be consequences. Emily tried to defend Dave, saying they weren't on speaking terms and that he blames her for what happened. I told her I didn't care. She would see him at work, and she could pull him aside. I then told her that she needed to find a place to live immediately. She said she had nowhere to go, and I told her that's not my problem. I would take the kids to live with family members if needed, but their school was close, so I couldn't move them far. There was no immediate family nearby, but I wasn't going to be the one forced to leave. I did nothing wrong, and I didn't deserve to be the one inconvenienced. As for Dave, he didn't get to keep his job and marriage intact without consequences. Emily claimed she didn't know what to do, but again, that wasn't my problem. I told her narcissistic tendencies had affected me mentally and emotionally throughout our relationship. She needed to hear this because narcissistic people rarely admit their faults. I told her that for the sake of becoming a better mother to our kids, she needed to change. That would be the extent of our relationship going forward. I made it clear that I wasn't her friend anymore, and didn't want to hear any of her BS. In the past, she knew I was a problem solver, and would use that to manipulate me. I asked her to leave. She had no response. I plan to inform Dave's wife and make sure he leaves his job first, so the situation doesn't affect the kids too much. I don't want Emily to lose her job, but if they don't do what I've asked, that's their choice. And they'll face the consequences. I've contacted a lawyer, and we are meeting midweek to lay everything out, including things from the past. There will be another follow-up as things progress. I applaud how you manage the situation. While Emily is obviously lying, she doesn't care about you. You have the advantage and can use it to your favor. You can take custody of the kids and make sure Emily doesn't get anything. However, consult your lawyer and check your state's laws related to adultery. Tell Dave's wife, but don't give her the evidence right away. You can meet up and show it to her if needed, but tell her the evidence will only be shared with her lawyer in the presence of your lawyer. That way, you ensure it doesn't leak, and she handles it legally. Well done for not letting yourself be manipulated. It seems you have everything under control. Keep it up and get a divorce. You deserve someone who loves and respects you, unlike her. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you liked my video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a good day. After my meeting with the lawyer, I felt more confident about the steps I needed to take moving forward. We discussed the video and the legal implications of using it. My lawyer agreed that showing it to Dave's wife was a reasonable course of action, but advised me to do it in a controlled manner to protect myself and my kids. He also helped me set up the groundwork for filing for divorce. While this process is going to be long and painful, I know it's the best thing for me and my children. As for Emily, I've been avoiding as much contact with her as possible, except when it comes to discussions about the kids. She has been trying to reach out, sending messages about how sorry she is and how much she wants to make things right. But I know it's too late for that. Her apologies feel more like attempts to manipulate me into staying, rather than genuine remorse. She's still more concerned about her own image and the consequences of the affair than the actual damage she's done to our family. I've also decided to go ahead with informing Dave's wife. It wasn't an easy decision, but after what happened, I couldn't live with the idea of him getting away with this without any consequences. I found her contact information and arranged to meet her. I showed her the video, and as expected, she was devastated. It was hard to see someone else's life crumble because of what Emily and Dave did, but I believe she deserved to know the truth. She thanked me for telling her, and we both agreed to keep things civil for the sake of the children involved. In the meantime, Emily has been trying to downplay the affair, saying it was a one-time mistake. But I know better. It wasn't just a slip-up. It was a betrayal that took planning and effort. She had been checking my location, making sure I wasn't home, and lying about therapy sessions just to be with Dave. It wasn't something that just happened. It was a deliberate choice she made, time and time again, to put herself and her desires above our family. I've now begun the process of filing for divorce. The lawyer helped me outline the terms, and I made sure that the kids would remain my priority. I'm pushing for primary custody, as I don't trust Emily to put their needs first. I'm also making sure that our assets are divided fairly, and that she doesn't walk away with more than she deserves. The fact that she brought another man into our home and into our bed shows a complete lack of respect for me and our family. As this process continues, I've been focusing on healing and moving forward with my life. I'm spending more time with the kids, and I'm making sure they know that they are loved and cared for. They don't fully understand what's happening yet, but I'm doing my best to shield them from the worst of it. I want them to grow up in a stable and loving environment, and I'm determined to provide that for them, even if their mother isn't part of the equation. Looking back on everything, I realize now how much of my relationship with Emily was built on lies. I had always thought of her as my ride or die, the person who would stick by me through thick and thin. But the truth is, she only stuck around when things were easy. The moment life got hard, she checked out. She made it clear through her actions that she wasn't willing to fight for us. And while that hurts, I'm also grateful to have found out the truth before wasting any more years with her. As I move forward, I'm taking things one day at a time. There's still a long road ahead, and I know that the divorce proceedings and custody battle will be difficult. But I'm ready for it. I've built a support system of friends and family who have been there for me through all of this, and I know I can rely on them to help me get through it. I've also started seeing a therapist to work through my own feelings and trauma. It's been helpful to have someone to talk to who isn't directly involved in the situation. Ultimately, I know that this experience has changed me. I'll never be the same person I was before, but I'm okay with that. I've learned a lot about myself and about what I'm willing to tolerate in a relationship. I won't let anyone else take advantage of me like this again. I deserve better, and so do my kids. They deserve a father who is strong, capable, and willing to stand up for what's right, and that's exactly who I'm going to be. As for Emily, I don't know what her future holds, but I hope she takes this as a wake-up call. She needs to confront her own issues, her narcissism, and the damage she's caused. Maybe one day she'll change, but I'm not holding my breath. For now, I'm focused on my own healing and moving forward with my life. And I know that, in the end, I'll come out of this stronger than ever. Thank you all for your support and for following along with my story. Your advice and encouragement meant the world to me. Stay tuned for updates as things progress.